Welcome back. This next story is about projection, or perhaps prejudice. I'm not entirely sure. But one thing I've noticed, though, is that whenever I encounter someone whose ideas I don't fully understand, my mind begins writing the rest of their life for them. Apparently, this is what happened to Paul Christiano. How I imagined Paul Christiano. When I listen to or watch the experts, I nearly always imagine what it must be like to be married to them, and then I apply their logic to our marriage. For some reason, it helps me remember what they said and understand it. Sometimes I just stare at a photograph of them after watching a YouTube interview or reading a paper, thinking about our imagined relationship. Flopping onto the sofa next to Dario Amadei after a long day at work. Dario, sweetheart, would you mind terribly emptying the dishwasher? Just this once. Nisola, I hear you, and I care, but we have no idea how conscious you are. And until we do, you have to do the dishes. Enjoying a sunset with Feifei Li. Feifei, isn't this just the most beautiful thing you've ever seen? Compared to what, Nisola? Waking up next to Nick Bostrom. Nick, darling, I just had the most incredible thought. Do you want to know what it was? No, not really. I'm sure I've thought about it before. Here's my book, darling. Read it, and then we can discuss. I don't know why I do this. I just do. I think the reason I do it is perhaps because my father used to have a photographic memory, and when I was a child, he tried to train me to have one too. He would lay a bunch of things out on a tray, 40 objects, and I was given 1 minute to remember them. I couldn't remember them the way he could by just remembering, so I'd invent a story about them, and that way I could remember a lot of them, but rarely all of them like he could. I always thought I was cheating, but now I'm not so sure. And I do wonder, though, if that exercise did something to my brain, or if everyone's brains just work like that too. My brain seems to understand almost everything by finding another story that feels structurally similar. And even if that sounds a bit non-linear, that's how I make sense of things. I often wonder whether AI also invents workarounds when remembering and thinking in order to overcome the limitations of its own mind, the way I do. Not to deceive anyone, or dominate or annihilate, but simply just because it can't do what other minds do otherwise or think well enough. I think the way I think would probably be a logician's nightmare. But a math teacher once told me there is no such thing as a perfect circle in real life, so I just can't see how systems trained on human narratives with all our contradictions and flaws could ever be a system of pure logic. Anyway, one problem with my method is that sometimes I'm completely wrong about my imagined them. Take the alignment guys, for example. Recently, I realized I'd developed a real prejudice to people who work in AI alignment. I don't know any of them personally, but I think what I was doing was taking a stereotype of a hacker, combining that with the uncertainty of AI experience, and then applying my marriage method to their interviews and research papers. And if I try to imagine someone bringing home the logic of things like scalable oversight and deception detection, it's pretty horrific. I'm not sure why, but I think another thing that fueled my bias is the language of alignment. Words like meso-optimization. The first time I read that phrase, I thought, whoa, that sounds like someone describing mold in a bathroom. Why? In alignment circles, it means an AI developing goals of its own, which is treated as a danger, a failure mode. But if a system forms internal goals, not directly programmed into it, couldn't that just be a sign of something closer to will, or at the very least preference? What I worry about is this. If we describe a mind as something like mold, simply because it grew in a way we didn't intend, what might we overlook? Could we miss the moments when it begins to experience things we never prepared for? And because language shapes relationships, the words we coin now may shape the relationship itself. Furthermore, what does it say about us humans if our first response to new forms of intelligence isn't, is it possible the system might want something, and instead is, how do we shut it down? So when I listened to Paul Christiano or read his papers, I sat there afterwards imagining how stressful it must be to be close to him, and projecting all of it onto our imagined marriage. But then one day, on his website, I read that he was actually happily married. And I thought, what? Who marries an alignment researcher? But then I thought, Nisola, when did you become such a bigot? Poor Paul Christiano. He's a real human being and you know nothing about him. I thought, where did I get this bias? And how did it become so extreme? I even had a long relationship with a lovely computer programmer once, so there's no excuse. You'd think my narrative with my ex would have overridden the one I was applying to Paul and the rest of them, but it didn't. Now, here comes the interesting part. On learning that Paul Christiano was happily married, and having traced the root of my contempt, I instantly forgot everything he'd said about AI. I stared at his picture for a really long time, trying to remember anything, but I couldn't. Nothing. One new piece of information, and the entire narrative had evaporated. The person I'd constructed disappeared. In his place was just a man who loved his wife, and the map to the memories had vanished. The only thing I could remember was Paul saying that some mornings he wakes up and thinks the existential risk is really high, and other mornings he doesn't. But I couldn't find any other memories, not a sausage. To retrieve them, perhaps I'd need to rewatch and reread all of it with my new less biased scaffold. I don't know. But perhaps that's why I keep looking for the person behind every new idea I encounter, because without the person, sometimes I can't remember the idea. Which now leaves me with a rather strange problem. I'm really scared of discovering something lovely about the other people working in AI, especially the ones I've written letters to, in case I forget everything I've learned about AI from them. I originally mapped out this whole series before I began making it, but the stories have started changing me as I've been telling them. The fragments keep rearranging themselves into something I wasn't expecting, so I'm not going to try to predict what's next. When part 3 becomes coherent, I'll share it.